everyone and welcome back to my channel. This is Glossy Philosophy. My name is Jansen Bindman. Make sure that you are subscribed to this channel. Give this video a thumbs up because today we are doing our first 2026 book talk, which is The Lathe of Heaven by Ursula K. Le Guin. So stay tuned. Grab your coffee, grab your book, because this is a doozy, friends. The Lathe of Heaven may not be the thickest book, but there's a lot to unpack in here, and we're just going to touch on a few things. So first of all, Ursula K. Le Guin, this is not the first book that she's written. This is not her last book that she wrote. It was one of many, and she wrote short stories, she wrote novels, she wrote many, many things. So if you enjoyed this book, I would definitely recommend reading some of her other works. She even has nonfiction where she helps you figure out how to write if you are interested in that. Now, let's dive into a quick synopsis or a quick summary of what The Lathe of Heaven is actually all about. This book starts off very 1984-ish, where we have this kind of dystopian society and we have our main character, George Orr, which, yes, is kind of a very close connection to George Orwell. But George Orr, we come to find out, has very different characteristics from the protagonist of 1984. George Orr is having trouble dreaming, and he has basically overdosed on his farm card, his pharmacy card. He's been taking too many drugs that will stop him from sleeping. We don't know why. And he is recommended, and this society recommends, that he goes and sees a psychiatrist. He goes and sees someone who is very self-assured and seems to know the right answer to everything. His name is Dr. Haber, and from the very start, the relationship between the two men is a very interesting one. It's very much where Dr. Haber almost feels like the master over George Orr, and you will do what I say, and George Orr kind of just goes along with it until he doesn't. Throughout this whole psychiatric process, we discover that George Orr can have kind of these magical, literally life-changing dreams. They call them effective dreams. And when George Orr effectively dreams, he actually changes the past, the present, and the future. For example, if George Orr were to dream about a pink poodle, then pink poodles would have been around since the beginning of time, and it would not be shocking to society. It would be something that has always occurred and something that will always occur until he has another effective dream releasing the pink poodle from his brain. Dr. Haber, as you can imagine, as a very self-assured, this is right, this is wrong, takes advantage of this right away. And over the 6 weeks that he is working with George Orr, society, life, and civilization changes very drastically and dramatically from what you and I know, and definitely dabbles in the ancient Roman history along with some science fiction. There are aliens that actually touch down and become part of human life as well. And by the end, George Orr, as I have said, has been able to take back control of his life and his effective dreams. So how do we begin to unpack it? Well, the theme of 2026 book talks is Unforeseen Consequences, where a character is supposed to start on a journey somewhere and believes that it will take them in one direction and actually takes them in a completely opposite direction. This happens to not just George Orr, but also to Dr. Haber and kind of our sub character, which is Heather Lilac. Each of these three characters goes through a series of events which takes them from one direction into a completely other direction, and sometimes they handle it well and sometimes they don't. Definitely all unforeseen consequences. With George Orr, we have someone who who understands that he has an immense power, and he doesn't want to mess around with everybody else's lives. He wants to keep the world as it is. He wants everybody to have free will. He doesn't think that he should be the person to impose his own subconscious thoughts on everyone else. So he's trying to do the responsible thing. He goes and he sees a psychiatrist who is supposed to help him, and he asks Dr. Haber, please help me to stop effectively dreaming. Please help me to stop changing the world, because eventually Dr. Haber is able to see right before his eyes that George Orr isn't lying. He is not actually crazy. He can change. At first, the changes are very small, and then as Dr. Haber works with George Orr's mind, he really twists everything around and begins to make big changes in society. Dr. Haber, he starts out thinking that he is going to make the world a better place, but the more he messes with George Orr's subconscious, his dreamlike state, the worse the world and society is getting. Yes, it looks really good on numbers because diseases are down, hunger is down. We even have a moment toward the end of the book where we have gotten rid of skin tones and everyone is gray, so everybody is equal. But we've gotten rid of things like the Gettysburg Address. We've gotten rid of people like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We've gotten rid of the fight in people, and so humankind takes that fight and puts it in a very unhealthy, very Romanesque way, and coliseums have been built. And even though people aren't allowed to watch a lot of television, which I think a lot of us would say is good, humanity has found a way to find their entertainment elsewhere. And so inside of these coliseums, we get that hand-to-hand combat where George Orr describes it as a bloodbath. We also have these things called citizens' arrests, where everyone who has been deemed worthy can carry around a gun that basically has a needle in there that will kill someone instantly if that person is found to have some kind of a cancer or a disease that cannot be cured by science as it is right now. Now, Dr. Haber gets very upset with George Orr multiple times throughout the book. He suggests dreams to him in the hypnotic state right before George Orr goes into an effective dream. But George Orr's mind always seems to twist it a little bit differently in an unexpected way. It is suggested to George Orr that humankind has to stop fighting each other. But in George Orr's subconscious, he cannot imagine a world where people don't fight. So he finds a new enemy for them to fight, and they begin to fight aliens. Another person, Heather Lilac, who will come in a little bit later, suggests we have to stop fighting the aliens on the moon. So then the aliens come down from the moon and they land on Earth and we start fighting them there. Now the aliens turn out to be some of the coolest and most chill kind of creatures there are. They look like giant sea turtles. They are very calm. They seem to understand the ways of the universe in ways that humanity, including George Orr, who possibly created them, cannot understand. And the sea turtle aliens actually are the ones that help George Orr understand how to take back control of his own mind and his effective dreaming. And they say that they understand the effective dreaming, and this is how you stop it and take back control of your dreams so that he himself can go on dreaming, but safely. And then of course we have Heather Lilac, who becomes the love interest of George Orr, and she also tries to help George a few times in various realities. But of course, every time she goes down one path, something else happens, either from an effective dream or being treated differently by Dr. Haber or society, or lots and lots of different situations. Aside from the theme of unforeseen consequences, I think some of the other themes that are really interesting throughout this entire book are, what are the consequences for working towards change? You think you're working towards good and then something bad happens that you didn't expect. How do you deal with that situation and try to get back on track to making humanity, to making the world a little bit better? Another theme is utopia. We start in a dystopia and Haber is trying desperately to head us, or to give us, a utopian society, but it's not going right. And what gives Dr. Haber the authority to decide what everybody's utopia is around the world? And not even just humanity, but now we have the sea turtle aliens as well. And it just asks those really tough questions of, what are we actually fighting for? What do we actually want? Who should be in charge of these wants, desires, and needs? And how do we make sure that everyone is raised up with all of these changes while also leaving humanity, leaving the humanness in humanity. One of my favorite things that George Orr confronts Haber with is, yes, you know, like sickness is down, poverty is down, all these things are down, and yet when I walk through the streets, the eyes in everybody are just dead. No one is actually alive. No one seems to be feeling the feelings that they should be feeling. And everything is gray because we're all gray, which is fine because it got rid of the racial injustices. But now we have this problem, and now we're not being creative, and now we're still killing each other in the Colosseum. And then, of course, it also calls upon almost like a Shakespearean idea of what happens in sleep. When we are asleep, when we are in deep sleep and we are effectively dreaming or just dreaming in general, it is a mystery. And Haber continues to try and bash into Orr's brain, and he'll stop at nothing to get in there. He has a machine called the Augmentor, which really tries to map it out. But for whatever reason, George Orr's brain won't let him in completely, which for this world is a good thing, because Haber should obviously not be in charge of everybody's life, fate, past, present, and future. In fact, the Augmentor gets pretty close to mapping out how to create effective dreams that Haber tells Orr he doesn't need him anymore, and he himself is going to start effectively dreaming. But when at the very end he hooks himself up to his machine and effectively dreams, he is unable to handle the power, and instead of having a nice, effective dream, he ends up having a nightmare, and everything kind of gets stripped away. And luckily, George Orr is able to turn off the Augmentor before it goes too far, but what we're left with is a reality with lots and lots of realities kind of all smashed together. We have roads that end in the middle of nowhere. We have transportation that in some worlds hasn't even been created yet. Some people are back to a skin tone and others are still gray. But the beautiful thing at the end of the book, and the thing that I really love, is that humanity finds a way to keep going. We find a way to fight the good fight and rebuild in new and unique ways. And once we kind of get our own power back as a society, as humankind around the world, we're able to rebuild and keep going. And I think that's a beautiful message, that no matter what happens, we need to trust ourselves and we need to work together. It is not up to an individual to decide everything for everybody, but collectively we can create something beautiful, and we can always come back from a nightmare and create something worthwhile. I hope you enjoyed the first 2026 book talk, The Lathe of Heaven. It is such a great book. I've read it twice now. I will probably reread it again. There's so much to unpack, and there's so much you can keep deep diving into. There's lots of references to other works, Shakespeare, George Orwell, of course. And in the beginning, in the introduction, there's a really beautiful comment by the introducer who says that science fiction is really a conversation between other science fiction authors. So Ursula is actually responding to somebody else with this book, and I think that's a really beautiful thing. It kind of goes along with the theme of together we can create and help each other, instead of just one person has all the answers. I do videos every Wednesday, from book talks to fashion to makeup. So I will see you very soon in the next one. Bye.